Overview of right to unencumbered voting. The unencumbered right to vote is the concept that all eligible citizens should have free and fair access to cast their ballots without unreasonable barriers. In the United States, this right is currently facing significant debate, legislation, and litigation. Efforts are underway at the state and federal levels to both expand and restrict voting access. Historical and legal context. The right to vote has evolved over centuries through constitutional amendments and legislation intended to dismantle barriers to the ballot box. Constitutional amendments, ratified amendments extended voting rights, including the 15th, 1870, race, and 19th, 1920, sex, and eliminated barriers, such as the poll tax with the 24th Amendment. 1964. Voting Rights Act of 1965, via this landmark law prohibited voter discrimination based on race and ethnicity and established federal oversight of elections in certain jurisdictions with a history of discrimination. 2013 Supreme Court ruling. The Supreme Court's decision in Shelby County v. Holder invalidated the VRA's core provision that required states with a history of discrimination to receive federal approval before changing their voting procedures. Critics argue this has enabled a new wave of restrictive voting laws. Current state of voting rights debates. The debate over an unencumbered right to vote is centered on two competing narratives: expanding access versus preventing fraud and ensuring security. Arguments for voter access. Advocates for broader access argue that voting should be made as easy as possible for all eligible citizens. Voter suppression concerns. Organizations like the Brennan Center for Justice and the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, document a rising number of restrictive state voting laws enacted since 2013, particularly after the 2020 election. Key barriers. These laws often disproportionately affect minority voters, low-income individuals, young people, and voters with disabilities through measures such as reducing early voting days and hours, imposing strict voter ID laws that are difficult for some populations to obtain, aggressively purging voter rolls, sometimes removing eligible voters by mistake, restricting ballot drop boxes and absentee voting, systemic issues. Other issues, such as inaccessible polling places, language barriers, and lack of civic education, also create structural hurdles for voters. Arguments for election integrity and security. Supporters of stricter voting laws often frame them as necessary measures to prevent fraud and ensure election integrity, though evidence of widespread fraud is limited. Proof of citizenship. Legislation like the SAVE Act, reintroduced in the House in January 2025, proposes requiring documentary proof of U.S. citizenship for federal voter registration. Critics argue that voting by non-citizens is already rare and that such laws could disenfranchise millions of eligible citizens. Federal versus state control. In March 2025, an executive order was signed regarding election integrity. It prioritizes the enforcement of existing laws to prevent foreign nationals from contributing to U.S. elections and ends actions that promote access to voting. Project 2025. This conservative policy agenda includes measures that, according to critics, could weaken voting rights by stripping the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division of its power to enforce voting rights laws, making election-related mistakes criminal offenses, and allowing aggressive voter purges. Federal legislative actions. Congress continues to debate major voting rights legislation aimed at setting national standards, but it faces significant hurdles. John R. Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, VRA, reintroduced in August 2025. This bill seeks to restore and update the provisions of the original VRA, which were weakened by the Supreme Court. The bill has been introduced, but has not yet become law. Freedom to Vote Act. A comprehensive bill introduced in past sessions, the act included provisions for automatic voter registration, no-excuse absentee voting, and minimum early voting standards. It would also curb partisan gerrymandering. Though it passed the House in previous sessions, it did not advance in the Senate. The SAVE Act, H.R. 22, as noted, this bill, reintroduced in January 2025, would require documentary proof of citizenship for federal voter registration. Critics argue it is a form of voter suppression. Broader threats to voting rights. The debate extends beyond specific laws to systemic issues that can undermine public confidence and democratic processes. Election worker harassment. Election officials face rising threats, intimidation, and politically motivated attacks driven by conspiracy theories and disinformation. Weakening federal agencies. Proposals like those in Project 2025 would cut resources from agencies like the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA, which provides crucial support for election security. Politicizing enforcement. The Project 2025 proposal to shift election crime prosecution from the Civil Rights Division to the Criminal Division has raised concerns about politicizing the enforcement of voting laws. AI-generated content notice. Please note that some of the information and materials provided were generated with the assistance of artificial intelligence, AI, tools. While every effort has been made to ensure accuracy, users should independently verify any critical information.